We've decided to move in a different direction. I read the text 3 times before it sank in. 9 months of work. The biggest deal in Northrise Apparel's history. And they were firing me by text message. My name is Eric Dalton. I'm 44, and until 30 seconds ago I was Senior Acquisitions Director at Northrise Apparel in New York City. The company specialized in athletic wear distribution, and I'd spent the last 9 months of my life building what would become their crown jewel, a $58 million international distribution agreement with Meridian Sports Group out of Germany. Every connection in that deal came from my network. Every negotiation point, every clause, every handshake that moved us forward, all mine. I'd worked 18-hour days, missed my daughter's soccer games, and postponed a vacation with my ex-wife just to keep this thing moving. The text was from Carter Donnelly, my boss, regional vice president who'd been gunning for my position since the day I was hired 3 years ago. Carter was the type who took credit for wins and found scapegoats for losses. He had that corporate smile that never reached his eyes, and a handshake that felt like grabbing a dead fish. I sat in my corner office on the 32nd floor, looking out at Manhattan while the reality settled in. The Meridian deal was 48 hours from final execution. I had the signed partnership agreement sitting in my desk drawer. All that remained was the final transfer authorization and signature page. My phone buzzed again, another text from Carter. Clear your desk by end of day. Security will escort you out at 5 p.m. I didn't respond. I'd learned a long time ago that silence was sometimes the smartest move you could make. What Carter didn't know, what he'd never bothered to learn, was that I'd structured this entire deal through my own consulting entity, Dalton Strategic Ventures. It was a legitimate business structure I'd established years ago for freelance work, and when Northrise hired me, I'd negotiated the right to maintain certain client relationships through my own firm. The Meridian partnership had always been my deal. I'd brought it to Northrise, not the other way around. The legal paperwork reflected that reality, even if Carter had never taken the time to read the fine print. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the contract folder. $58 million in international distribution rights. My signature was already on half the pages. The other half just needed final authorization. Carter thought he was firing me. What he was actually doing was cutting me loose from any obligation to complete this deal for Northrise Apparel. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my lawyer's contact. Some conversations couldn't wait until tomorrow. 3 years ago, I'd joined Northrise Apparel because they promised me autonomy and growth potential. The company was mid-sized, doing about $200 million in annual revenue, but they wanted to break into international markets. That's where I came in. I'd spent 15 years in sports apparel distribution before Northrise. Built relationships across Europe, Asia, and South America. When smaller companies needed someone who could open doors that had been locked for decades, they called me. My marriage to Jennifer had ended 2 years before I took the Northrise job. We'd been together 14 years, had a daughter named Chloe who was now 12. The divorce was amicable enough. Jennifer got the house in Connecticut. I got an apartment in Manhattan and weekend custody. We both agreed the split was overdue. Chloe was the bright spot in all of it. Smart as hell, played competitive soccer, and had this way of cutting through adult nonsense with questions that made you think. She was the reason I'd wanted the Northrise position to work out. Stable income, predictable schedule, the kind of job that would let me be present for her teenage years. Carter had seemed supportive in the beginning. Told me I had a free hand to pursue international opportunities. But as my deals started closing and my relationships with board members grew stronger, his attitude shifted. First, it was small things. He'd schedule department meetings during my client calls. Then he started questioning my expense reports, demanding receipts for meals that had been approved months earlier. Last month, he'd tried to assign me an assistant, someone who would have access to all my client communications. The warning signs were there. I just thought I was valuable enough to weather his insecurity. The Meridian deal had been my insurance policy. Hans Müller, their chief executive, was someone I'd worked with 5 years earlier on a smaller project. When he reached out about expanding into the United States market, I knew it was exactly what Northrise needed. But I'd also learned to protect myself. The preliminary agreement I'd negotiated with Meridian was structured as a partnership between them and Dalton Strategic Ventures, with Northrise as the primary fulfillment partner. It gave me control over the relationship while still bringing the business to my employer. Carter had never questioned the structure. He'd been too focused on the revenue projections to dig into the legal details. Now, sitting in my office with his termination text on my phone, I realized he'd just handed me the biggest gift of my career. I pulled up Hans Muller's contact information. It was 11 p.m. in Munich, but Hans was a night owl. If I was going to make this move, it had to happen before Carter realized what he'd done. Some opportunities only knocked once. And sometimes, they came disguised as a termination text. I called Hans at 11:15 p.m. his time. He answered on the second ring. "Eric, I was hoping to hear from you. Are we still on schedule for Thursday's final execution?" "There's been a development," I said. "Northrise has terminated my employment, as of today." Silence on the other end. Then, "I see. And what does this mean for our agreement?" I'd been asking myself the same question for the last hour. The partnership agreement was crystal clear. Meridian Sports Group was contracting with Dalton Strategic Ventures for United States distribution rights. Northrise was listed as the fulfillment partner, but they weren't the primary contractor. "The agreement stands as written," I told Hans. "Dalton Strategic Ventures is still fully committed to the partnership. We'll need to identify a new fulfillment partner, but that shouldn't delay our timeline." "Excellent. I must admit, Eric, we've been concerned about Northrise's capacity to handle our volume requirements." Hans had always been direct. It was one of the things I liked about working with him. "What kind of concerns?" "Their warehouse facilities are dated. Customer service response times are slow. We've been considering recommending you find a more suitable partner anyway." This was news to me. I'd been so focused on closing the deal that I hadn't been tracking Meridian's satisfaction with Northrise's operational capabilities. "Do you have alternative partners in mind?" "We've been impressed with Velmark Automation's capabilities. They handle distribution for several of our European partners already. Would you be open to exploring that option?" Velmark Automation. I knew them. They were larger than Northrise, more sophisticated, and had been trying to break into the sports apparel market for years. If I could structure a partnership with them instead of Northrise, the deal would actually be stronger. "I'll reach out to Velmark tomorrow," I said. "Assuming they're interested, we could potentially accelerate the timeline instead of delaying it." "Perfect. Eric, I want you to know, our relationship is with you, not with Northrise. We chose Dalton Strategic Ventures because of your reputation and network. This change doesn't concern us." After I hung up, I sat in my office until the building grew quiet. Security hadn't come to escort me out. Carter had probably forgotten to actually arrange it. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to Velmark Automation's business development team. Then I opened another window and began researching warehouse space in New Jersey. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. By midnight, I had 3 potential fulfillment partners identified and a rough business plan sketched out. Dalton Strategic Ventures was about to become a real company instead of just a consulting shell. Carter thought he was firing me. What he'd actually done was force me to claim what was already mine. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt focused. Thursday morning came faster than I expected. I'd spent the previous day working from my apartment, reaching out to potential fulfillment partners and preparing the final contract documents for Meridian. At 9 a.m., my phone started ringing. Carter. "Eric, we need to talk. My office. Now." "I don't work for you anymore, Carter. You made that clear in your text. This is about the Meridian deal. You can't just walk away from a $58 million contract." "I'm not walking away from anything. I'm fulfilling my obligations to my client." "Your client? That's Northrise's client, Eric. You developed that relationship on company time." I'd been expecting this conversation. Actually, no. I brought Meridian to Northrise, not the other way around. The contract reflects that reality. Silence. Then, "I'm looking at the partnership agreement right now. Dalton Strategic Ventures is listed as the primary contractor." "That's correct." This is some kind of setup. You planned this. I structured a legitimate business relationship that protected both parties. You chose to terminate that relationship. Carter's voice got harder. You're stealing our client. I'm maintaining a client relationship that predates my employment with Northrise. If you'd like to discuss a potential fulfillment partnership, I'm open to that conversation. Partnership? You work for us, Eric. Worked. Past tense. You fired me, remember? The line went dead. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Patricia Hawkins, Northrise's general counsel. Eric, I need you to come in immediately. We have a situation. Patricia was someone I respected. She'd been with Northrise for 8 years and had always been straight with me. If she was calling, it meant Carter had escalated this to the executive level. What kind of situation? The Meridian contract. Carter is claiming you violated your non-compete agreement. I'd been waiting for this too. Patricia, I haven't violated anything. The Meridian relationship existed before my employment with Northrise. It's specifically excluded from my non-compete clause. I need to see the original agreement documentation. I'll email it to you within the hour. Eric, I have to ask, are you planning to complete this deal independently? I'm planning to fulfill my contractual obligations to Meridian Sports Group. Whether that's in partnership with Northrise or through alternative arrangements depends on whether Northrise wants to work with me. Carter is threatening legal action. Based on what grounds? He's claiming tortious interference with business relationships. I almost laughed. Carter clearly hadn't read the contract language carefully enough. Patricia, Northrise was never the primary contractor. They were always the fulfillment partner. Meridian's relationship is with Dalton Strategic Ventures. I'm going to need time to review this. Take all the time you need. But the deal executes tomorrow morning, with or without Northrise. After I hung up, I called Velmark Automation. Their business development director, Kevin Walsh, had responded enthusiastically to my inquiry. Eric, we've been hoping for an opportunity like this. When can we meet? This afternoon. But Kevin, I need you to understand, this is a time-sensitive situation. The contract executes tomorrow morning. Not a problem. We can move quickly when the opportunity is right. By 2 p.m., I was sitting in Velmark's conference room in Newark, going through the distribution requirements with their operations team. They had everything Meridian needed: modern warehouse facilities, sophisticated inventory management systems, and existing relationships with international shipping partners. This is exactly the kind of partnership we've been looking for, Kevin said. We can handle the fulfillment requirements immediately. At 4 p.m., Patricia Hawkins called back. Eric, I've reviewed the contract language. You're right. Northrise was never the primary contractor. But Carter is insisting we fight this. On what grounds? He's convinced the board that you've acted in bad faith. Patricia, I've acted exactly according to the agreements we all signed. If Carter wants to challenge that, he's welcome to try. He's threatening to sue you personally for breach of fiduciary duty. That one stopped me. A personal lawsuit would be expensive and time-consuming, even if I ultimately won. What does the board think? The board wants the revenue. If you can guarantee completion of the Meridian deal, they're willing to negotiate. What kind of negotiation? Revenue sharing. 50-50 split on the Meridian profits. I thought about it for 30 seconds. No deal. Eric. Patricia, Carter fired me by text message. He made this choice. I'm not giving him half of a deal he tried to steal from me. Then we'll see you in court. Looking forward to it. That evening, I was reviewing the final contract documents when my phone rang. Unknown number. Eric Dalton? Speaking. This is James Peterson, board member at Northrise. We met briefly at the Christmas party last year. I remembered him. Older gentleman, maybe 65, who'd made his money in retail before joining Northrise's board. Mr. Peterson, what can I do for you? I'm calling about this situation with Carter and the Meridian deal. I've been reviewing the documentation, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? Carter told the board that you'd stolen a client and violated your employment agreement, but the paperwork tells a different story. I waited for him to continue. The truth is, you brought this deal to us, didn't you? Yes, sir. Meridian approached me directly based on previous work we'd done together. And you structured it as a partnership to protect both parties? That's correct. Eric, I need to ask you something directly. Did Carter know about the contract structure when he terminated you? He had access to all the documentation. Whether he read it is a different question. Peterson was quiet for a moment. The board wasn't consulted about your termination. Carter acted unilaterally. This was new information. I see. Several of us are questioning his judgment. A $58 million deal doesn't just happen by accident. Someone with your track record doesn't get fired by text message without board approval. What are you suggesting, Mr. Peterson? I'm suggesting that Carter made this personal when it should have remained professional. The question now is whether there's still a way to salvage the relationship. With all due respect, sir, Carter burned that bridge when he sent me a text message instead of having a conversation. What if Carter wasn't part of the equation anymore? That got my attention. What do you mean? The board is meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Carter's position is under review. Because of the Meridian situation? Because of his handling of the Meridian situation, and several other questionable decisions that have come to light recently. I thought about the implications. If Carter was out, the board might be willing to negotiate a different arrangement, but I'd already committed to Velmark Automation, and frankly, I was beginning to like the idea of being my own boss. Mr. Peterson, I appreciate the call, but I've already made alternative arrangements for fulfillment. The deal completes tomorrow morning as scheduled. With Velmark? You've done your homework. Eric, what would it take to bring you back as a partner, not an employee? Carter would have to be gone. And I'd want equity, not just revenue sharing. How much equity? 20% of the international division, with full autonomy over client relationships. That's a significant stake. It's a significant deal, and it won't be the last one if I'm properly incentivized. Peterson was quiet for a long moment. I'll present your terms to the board tomorrow morning. Respectfully, sir, I don't need Northrise anymore. If you want to partner with me, it has to be worth my while. I understand. Eric, can I ask you something? Sure. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? The independent structure, the backup fulfillment partner. You were ready for this. I thought about how to answer that honestly. Mr. Peterson, I've been working in this industry for 15 years. You learn to protect yourself. I didn't plan for Carter to fire me, but I wasn't caught completely off guard either. That's smart business. It's survival. After I hung up, I poured myself a scotch and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. Tomorrow morning, $58 million would transfer into Dalton Strategic Ventures business account. Whether Northrise wanted to be part of that future was up to them. But either way, I was done working for people who communicated through text messages. Friday morning, 9 a.m. I was sitting in Velmark's conference room with Kevin Walsh and his legal team, reviewing the final fulfillment agreement. My laptop was open to the Meridian contract portal, waiting for the 10 a.m. execution window. Everything looks good on our end, Kevin said. As soon as the primary contract executes, we're ready to begin inventory transfers. My phone buzzed. Text message from Patricia Hawkins. Board voted. Carter's out. They want to meet with you. I showed the message to Kevin. What do you think? I think you have options, he said. But we have a good thing here, Eric. Velmark can offer you resources that Northrise never could. He was right. Velmark had international experience, better technology, and deeper pockets. Partnership with them would position Dalton Strategic Ventures for growth beyond just the Meridian deal. At 9:45 a.m., James Peterson called. Eric, the board voted unanimously to terminate Carter's employment. We'd like to discuss bringing you back as head of international development. What kind of package? Base salary of $300,000, plus 15% equity in the international division, plus performance bonuses tied to deal closure. It was a good offer, better than what I'd been making as acquisitions director. But I'd already tasted independence, and it felt right. Mr. Peterson, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to decline. Eric, that's a generous package. It's not about the money. I've already committed to a fulfillment partnership with Velmark. The deal structure works better for everyone involved. What can we do to change your mind? Nothing. This isn't personal, sir. It's business. Northrise had its chance to keep me happy. Carter chose a different path. Peterson was quiet for a moment. I understand. Is there any possibility of future collaboration? Always. If Northrise wants to partner on specific deals, I'm open to those conversations, but as equals, not as employer and employee. Fair enough. Good luck, Eric. At 10 a.m. exactly, I clicked the execution button on the Meridian contract. The system confirmed receipt and processing. Within 5 minutes, I received confirmation that $58 million had been transferred to Dalton Strategic Ventures' escrow account. Kevin Walsh was watching the whole process. How does it feel? Like the first day of the rest of my life. My phone started ringing immediately. Hans Muller. Eric, congratulations. The transfer is confirmed on our end. We're excited to begin this partnership. Thank you, Hans. Velmark is ready to handle all fulfillment requirements. You're going to be impressed with their capabilities. Excellent. Now I have another opportunity I'd like to discuss with you. When are you free to fly to Munich? Next week works. What kind of opportunity? $120 million expansion into Asian markets. We need someone with your expertise to structure the partnerships. I looked at Kevin, who was grinning. I'm very interested in hearing more about that. After I hung up, Kevin stood up and shook my hand. Welcome to the big leagues, Eric. This is just the beginning. That afternoon, I called my daughter Chloe. She was at her mom's house in Connecticut. Dad, Mom said you quit your job. Something like that, sweetheart. I started my own company. Cool. Does that mean you'll have more time for my soccer games? It means I'll have more control over my schedule, and yes, I'll be at your next game. Awesome, I can't wait to tell my friends my dad owns a company. I smiled. Just remember, it's not about owning something, Chloe. It's about building something that matters. I know, Dad, but it's still pretty cool. She was right, it was pretty cool. Monday morning, I was having coffee in my new office space in Midtown when my phone rang. Carter Donnelly. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Carter. Eric, we need to talk. I thought you were terminated. I was, but I still have questions about the Meridian deal. Such as? How long were you planning to steal that contract? I'd been waiting for this conversation for 3 days. Carter, I didn't steal anything. I fulfilled a contractual obligation that you tried to interfere with. You set me up. No, I protected myself. There's a difference. The board thinks I'm incompetent. The board thinks you made a poor decision, which you did. Carter was quiet for a moment. Do you know what this has cost me? I assume your job. My reputation, my career. No one's going to hire me after this. I thought about all the 18-hour days I'd worked while Carter took credit for my relationships. All the client dinners he'd attended while I did the actual work. All the board presentations where he'd positioned himself as the architect of deals he'd barely understood. Carter, you fired me by text message while I was trying to close the biggest deal in company history. What did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd fight for your job. Why would I fight for a job working for someone who didn't respect me enough to have a conversation? I was protecting the company's interests. No, you were protecting your ego, and it cost you everything. The line was quiet for a long time. Finally, Carter spoke again. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Fix what? My situation. My reputation. I thought about it for a moment. Carter had made his choice when he sent that text message. The consequences were his to live with. Carter, here's some free advice. Learn to read contracts before you make decisions about them. And learn to have difficult conversations in person instead of through text messages. That's it? That's it. I hung up and went back to reviewing proposals from Hans Muller. The Asian expansion opportunity was even bigger than the original Meridian deal. $120 million in distribution rights across 6 countries. Carter had handed me the keys to an empire and didn't even realize it. 3 months later, I was sitting in Chloe's soccer coach's office, discussing her prospects for making the high school varsity team as an 8th grader. "She's got the skills," Coach Williams said, "and the work ethic, just like her old man, I imagine." I smiled. She gets that from her mother. After the meeting, Chloe and I drove to our favorite diner in Connecticut. It had become our tradition after her games, just the two of us talking about whatever was on her mind. "Dad, Jennifer said you made a lot of money on your new company." "Your mom's right. But money isn't the most important thing, Chloe." "What is?" "Control over your own life. The ability to make decisions that align with your values." She thought about that while working on her chocolate chip pancakes. "Is that why you left your old job?" "I didn't leave it, sweetheart. It left me. But yes, starting my own company means I get to choose who I work with and how I treat people." "Will you ever work for someone else again?" I considered the question seriously. "Probably not. Once you've tasted independence, it's hard to go back." "Good. I like that you're happier now." She was right. I was happier. The Asian expansion deal had closed 2 weeks earlier. Dalton Strategic Ventures now had distribution partnerships worth over $200 million. More importantly, I had complete control over those relationships. My phone buzzed. Text message from Hans Miller. "Eric, we have another opportunity to discuss. This one's worth $300 million. When can we meet?" I looked at my daughter, who was telling me about her plans for high school, and smiled. Some text messages were worth answering immediately. Others could wait until after pancakes.